guys, hello and welcome to our podcast number 3. And we have Jan Henrik Bartscht with us. Did I say your name correctly?
Mostly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And he's going to be giving us his insights on Industry 4.0. So, Jan, how are you doing today?
Fantastically well. Yeah, I think it's just a good day. It's just a good day. Sometimes we just need to wake up and just embrace the day and get out of bed and be grateful that we have this day and see what it brings. And this is one of those days.
All right, that's good to hear. Okay, so let's jump into our first question that we have for you today. So it's about a super app. So Tata Neu is going to be released to India's 1.3 billion population, right? And recently we have seen Grab, the Southeast Asia's super app. The share price is just tumbling. What do you have to say about super apps? Or like, do you think Tata Neu is also going to face the same fate as Grab?
Yep, great question. I'm reminded of the lesson that I created in the Innovate or Die online course, which is the last one, which is the war of the innovation ecosystems. And so I think what we're really seeing here is a war between innovation ecosystems. And, uh, I think China seems to have done a particularly good job in building out their super apps. And that has made them world leaders. And one of the rising powers in the world is India, that seeks to uh, certainly compare itself to China. And they don't have a super app. And so I think this is a very smart way of starting to bring something together that could work. I mean, Reliance is very well known. They have a very successful large company run for a long time. So they do have their limitations, of course, like all companies, but by and large, I think they do a good job. So this could be a recognition at the right levels that you need something in a digital age. It's a little bit like I wonder out loud if it's. I mean, I do think that digitalization in a way is 21st century colonization. Some of the mechanics are very similar, and so like you go in, you grab someone's territory, like, and then it's just yours, right? And so Grab went in and Uber went in and grabbed the territory. The taxi guys got colonized basically, right? Uh, and so a lot of what drove colonialism was the private companies. Like the British East India Company was a private company. India was essentially run by a private company. I mean, this is not a theory. This is legally, right? Um, and the Dutch East India Company was the first, famous for their tulip bubble that was part of that um, phenomena and so on. So you need a vehicle to kind of spread your colonial aspirations, shall we say. And super apps can be a very powerful way of spreading that, right? Like TikTok is from a Chinese company. It's not American. It's not European. And so that gives that cultural sphere a lot of influence and power and insight that if they didn't have TikTok, they wouldn't have. And you also can't get that power by just having lots of money or buying more tanks and planes. So it's a different kind of power and it's a different kind of capability. So I think that's the allure of super apps. But like you said, Grab has dropped, I don't know, it's at least 50%, maybe 70% now in their share price, right? And if you look at the super apps, they don't actually necessarily make any money at all. I think Uber's barely profitable, shall we say, and Grab is not profitable. Um, and I'm not aware of, at the moment, off the top of my head, I can't think of many large super apps. I mean, other than Amazon, which is a different conversation, right? I think because it's a slightly different approach. But I think that is something that still needs to be figured out. But I do see this as something it should be valued more as a strategic asset than necessarily something that has to be making loads and loads of money. I don't think it will be possible to make loads and loads of money out of the super apps. Um, but they are very important nevertheless.
Okay, it's interesting how you talked about colonization and the juxtaposition. Wait, is that a good word? Wait, let me say that again.
I mean, to kind of summarize that the way reason why I share it like that is it's about what's the model in your mind, right? About what is going on, right? What do we think is actually going on? And I think that understanding digitalization and the forces it unleashes can be useful to a world of colonization, right? Because in many ways, at a basic level, what drove the spirit of colonization is the realization that, oh my gosh, there's an entire world out there. Once the Europeans really started to realize there's essentially two continents out there that had not been explored, that was just astonishing, right? And so it's a bit like, in a similar way, when you realize if you're the first Amazon or you're the first Uber, how big this is going to get, right? How big is, 10 years ago, getting into a car with strangers was madness. Today, it's ordinary. It's beyond ordinary, right? And maybe in 10 years' time, we won't even think about it. It would just be it would be so intuitive. And so I think that it's what is different in the terms of the digital age is not just the next 10 years, it's really the next 100 years. It's really big. And, to think that sometimes I think I think a useful way to think about digitalization is that we are as far along in digitalization as the combustion engine was in the 1920s, right? The 1920s, combustion engines were still really at the beginning of their capability in terms of planes, tanks, automobiles, right? All this stuff. So the digital age has only barely begun. It's barely begun. And so when you are looking to position yourself in these landscapes, right, sometimes it's useful to be an early player. Like the British did well because they just captured a lot of colonies, right? The Spanish too, right? If you look at these patterns, there are reasons for why that happens, and the patterns of history repeat themselves. That's why they're called the patterns of history. So learning from them, studying them and understanding them and making them relevant to our day and age leads me to conclude that colonization is a useful way to think about 21st century digitalization. Yeah.
Okay. So again, interesting how you talked about colonization and how they were capturing colonies, because this brings me to my next question on Goldman Sachs. So over time, over like a short period of time, Goldman Sachs has acquired over 27 startups. So do you think acquiring startup or disruptors is the only way incumbent can beat the disruption?
No, I don't think that's not necessary, but they provide a very important mechanism for challenging fundamental beliefs and mindsets. And unless those fundamental beliefs and mindsets are challenged, the organization will not change, right? Because it's about that sense of identity and what we believe we are, right? So if you're an oil and gas company, you believe you're an oil and gas, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to do oil and gas, and you might buy let's say, a solar panel startup, but how much does the conversation of the solar panel startup affect your identity? Well, that's a difficult challenge, and that's where you can see organizations like British Petroleum, BP. Well, the original name was British Petroleum. Now I believe it's Beyond Petroleum. That's what the BP stands for. So you can have these sort of rebranding exercises and things like that, but are you able to change your core value sets, your core behaviors, your core identities? Because what often happens is that startups get acquired, and then there's such a big culture clash that a lot of the value of the startup is lost, and it can create very much an us and them mentality, right? Oh, those guys are like that because they're the creative startup. We're the boring business guys, but we're the ones who make money, and it can create tensions and challenges. So I think what you really need to have is a unifying sense of purpose, and I think that's something that is I admire a lot in what Elon Musk does. I mean, it's simple, but it's very straightforward. If you're interested in going to Mars, work for SpaceX, right? If you want to contribute in a tangible, meaningful way with a well-paid job, try and work for Tesla, right? And in terms of the sustainable energy transition. So what those companies are built around is a sense of purpose, right? The purpose of SpaceX is to colonize Mars. That is in the official documents of space. The purpose of SpaceX is not to make money. It's to build a colony on Mars, right? So if you think about most Industry 3.0 corporations, they are built to maximize shareholder value, which just means it makes loads of money. But in the twisting and turmoil and change of Industry 4.0, only buying startups is just one way to address the challenges that you face. You also need internal innovation as well, and collaboration and partnerships, and an ecosystem of innovation, really. And what is going to unify that ecosystem? Why are you going to be engaged? Why do you care? It's because about this shared sense of purpose. Right? Now, if your shared sense of purpose is to make loads of money, then great, go for that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But typically, people in the long term will want to have something that's more meaningful, a higher order goal that inspires them to their own greatness. And so, being able to articulate that and build a culture around that that it's authentic is the real challenge. It's not just buying a startup. It's how do you integrate that startup into your vision, into your culture, inspire them, inspire your employees so you can stay adaptive and creative.
Okay. So we could say that it all starts with caring, right? Like coming up with a sense of purpose. But when you mentioned Elon Musk just now, it just strikes me like I'm really amazed at how many things he does. Like, yes, I mean, Bill Gates have done great things too, and Jeff Bezos have so many successful ventures, but Elon Musk just gets it right like all the time. Like he's always in the news, and I mean even Bloomberg has an Elon Musk tracker in one of the section in the news. Like, do you ever wonder how he gets this all done, like Tesla and Starlink and SpaceX, and I don't know. Are there any others I'm missing? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it? And yeah, I think probably the whole world is fascinated. Um, I would like to be able to to replicate some of that, but I think in terms of being inspired, I've also reminded myself I am not him. I'm me. I'm just Jan. So do what I do, but obviously be inspired by it. I think also in our day and age, because of social media, we feel much closer to humans before. Right. In the past, if there was an exceptional individual, it'd be much harder to get closer to them because of, they only had the physical location, right? They might be in Oxford University, for example, right? And so you might never get to speak to them or hear them. But in today's information age, you can get very close to these individuals, and so on the one hand, I think Musk is an extraordinary man, but on the other hand, it's almost a statistical inevitability. There will always, in some sense, be a richest person in the world, right? So, and that richest person probably will be talented. So there's a two-way street to that, which I think is useful for making sure you stay grounded and worshiping your heroes. But that being said, I think what he also represents, certainly at least for me, is just the ability that you can do both. You can build a better world and you can make loads of money and have a good time doing that. And that's just so simple. But Tesla today, what are we, the 7th of April 2022, is valued more than all other major car companies combined. I mean, this is ludicrous. This is this is just absolutely insane, right? And the amount of value that he's created in a short time in a space that no one believed. And then, similar, not quite similar numbers, but certainly a lot of value creation for SpaceX as well. So, and then what they're trying to do with their global internet system, things like that. So he just has a level of imagination, audacity, vision, courage that just is far superior to a traditional, I mean, I would say 3.0 manager. It's just completely, the level of thinking of the 3.0 of the manager is just inadequate. It's orders of magnitude too low and too small. And I think that's where in my mind, I think, that there's a nice phrase, the future belongs to those who can imagine it and build it. He imagines the future and builds it. Whereas a lot of his other contemporaries would complain that it's not possible, or it's too expensive, it's too difficult, blah, 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 blah. So there's that ferocious spirit inside of him that requires reality to bend to his will. We will find a way to launch a space rocket into space and it will land again. I mean, like the smartest, richest people on Earth or governments had spent decades trying to solve that problem. They didn't figure it out. Right? The Russians couldn't figure it out. The Americans couldn't figure it out. The British, the Japanese, no one. But he did. Right? And so I think that there's that sense in that of spirit that's really admirable. He's able to not only generate a certain sense of spirit, but to sustain it and to nurture its energy every day, week, month, year. I mean, I can't even imagine what life must be like for him. Probably a lot going on. And so it can be easy to get lost or pulled away into a different direction, or lose your way, shall we say. But he seems to have a good knack for course correcting.
All right. Bending reality to your will. I think that's a whole another podcast in itself. But okay, so now my last question to you is, I know you're a sports card collector, or like a mini collector maybe. So do you think sports collectible in the form of NFT are just a fad, or are they here for the foreseeable future?
I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of a fad. Should you be paying $100,000 for a JPEG of a rock because it's stored in a blockchain register? Time will tell. Time will tell. But equally, if you'd said whatever amount of time ago that baseball cards would be valuable, or magazine covers or movie posters, you wouldn't believe what they are valuable today, right? So everything has the opportunity to have value within it. But I find a lot of the NFT stuff is going to face this basic challenge around scarcity, right? There are only so many baseball cards printed. There's and they're not going to get more baseball cards are not going to be printed, for example, right? Or your favorite Star Wars poster, right? There are literally just X amount out there of the originals, right? And that scarcity plays a role in the value of those. But in a digital age, you can just copy it. And yes, I understand that it's secured in a blockchain and blah 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 blah, but it's not the same. And maybe I'm just too traditional in this, but
Yeah, I
I
was just
don't
gonna
believe
say
it's
that. I
the same.
think we should, yeah, because I mean, let's just take the example of yesterday, how you were changing the clock batteries, and me and Shen were like, "Ah, like, I'm getting rid of all the clocks because we don't want to see analog stuff and like changing batteries. We just want a Google set to tell us what's the time." So I think that mindset thing will take some time for you, Jan, to change to, because NFT is crazy. I mean, people are crazy about having digital assets over just a physical card because you can show it online, right? So that's the main thing about it.
Yeah, and that's cool, right? But does that drive value? Does that mean that it's valuable? Does it becomes valuable? So for sure, there's value in having fun and sharing things online, and you've got your favorite being digitalized, right? That's great. But it doesn't mean that it's going to become necessarily very valuable. And I think that's where that difference is. So I see there's a lot of utility and possibility in how NFTs become a part of the fabric of society. Fantastic, cool. Share your passion. Make sure that artists get fairly paid. All these kinds of very positive things. But to think that all one's NFTs have suddenly become these really valuable baseball cards, I don't know. I don't know. I don't believe it. In my mind, I mean, it would be a bit like, I don't know if this is fully thought through, but it's like buying a computer game on Steam and downloading it, and then suddenly imagining that it's valuable because I've bought the download. Like, is it?
I think, yeah, the way we think about it, I think it's very different. I get where you're coming from. Like, is it? But to me, it's like the answer is yes, it is. But yeah,
Well,
I mean,
what's
time will
also
tell.
nice is that I have also gone through my passions for digitalization of things, but I found that a good clock really just does the job.
Well, time will tell. Well, timely pun. Okay.
The
So
timing is perfect.
yeah. So on this note, Jan, thank you so much for being on this podcast, and I hope our viewers enjoy this podcast. And let us know if you have any questions in the comment below. Anything else from
Okay.
you, Jan?
Nope. I'm into my fasting. I'm on day 4 of fasting, trying to match the make it to the 30 days for Ramadan. So let's see how it goes.
Yay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, and yep, see you all next time. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Leadapreneurs YouTube channel to get your weekly updates.